Malta. Beautiful weather. We've arrived yesterday and we've really loved everything we've seen so far. So we're very grateful to all of you for hosting us. And it's a pleasure to be joined by Farrugia, who's the CEO of Malta Enterprise, by Roberta Rodoligo, who's the head of unit at client relations and compliance at Residency Malta, and also by Scott Francis, who's the CEO of Trust Stamp, who are a startup here based in Malta.
So we're going to be able to cover a host of really exciting and interesting topics, everything from the current Maltese startup ecosystem to some of the opportunities and funding available here for founders relocating. And we'll also hear directly from a founder that has actually relocated to Malta. So that should be a very interesting and exciting conversation.
Brilliant. Okay, let's get started. So Kurt, first question goes to you. What is the startup ecosystem like in Malta?
Okay, so it's quite young in the sense that we've started building an ecosystem in the past, I'd say 5 to 6 years. So we're also startups as an ecosystem. However, I'd say it's thriving and it's growing very rapidly. What we've seen is that we make for an ideal location, both in terms of the island itself, but also the economic background we provide. So just a brief introduction on the Maltese economy is very diverse, first of all, and very mature as well. We have traditional manufacturing, we have highly advanced manufacturing, we have sectors from pharma to aviation, which are very mature. However, we're moving into high-end robotics, microchips, and the semiconductor sector, maybe something that not many people know around the globe. Most of the microchips that leave Malta and end up in our devices are coming from Malta, so they're a product made in Malta. Yes, very advanced. So the interlinkage between startups and the traditional sectors is a strong one. Also, it's a very important place where to find talent. So the island is small, the population is not so big, it's 500,000. However, our university and our technical institutes in Malta are producing some of the best talent that you'll find all around. And that's why we fill up our factories in the pharma sector, and we fill up companies that are dealing or producing AI products, because we have from science-based students to software developers that are some of the best that you could find. Of course, engineers and some of our manufacturing companies in the automotive industries. So once again, not many people know that most of the luxury car parts and switches are leaving Malta to go into the large cars and the luxurious cars. So what I mean is there's a very important ecosystem which will help startups also move along with their products, and possibly also have their products and link with traditional sectors. And that's why where we excel is, first of all, as starting a business in Malta is quite easy. So Malta Enterprise is the center for businesses. It's a governmental agency, of course, so we can open doors to the decision makers. And that's where we find that that personal link with companies is very important to do business in a jurisdiction such as Malta, which is a European jurisdiction, of course. Our laws and our operational language is English, is the English language. So it's very easy for companies to come over, and they don't have to translate all the laws or translate all the applications that they have to use to set their business up in Malta. So that's something that companies and that founders find very easy in operating in Malta.
That's incredibly interesting to hear. And I mean, you touched on many points here, from the location to the economy, the size and the language. A question for you, Roberta. So if there's a non-EU entrepreneur listening to this that is interested in setting up business here, what would they have to know and what would they have to do?
Sure. So basically, as Kurt was saying, the startup ecosystem was already present in Malta. However, through the startup residency program, what we tried to do was bridge a gap. Basically, we're trying to help non-EU nationals, entrepreneurs to relocate to Malta, and we're offering a 3-year residence permit, which is renewable for a further 5 years, so 8 years in total. We did this specifically because we know that the first 3 years for entrepreneurs, for a startup, they're crucial. So we wanted them actually to focus on their business rather than on the administrative part of relocating. And of course, we're also helping not just the entrepreneurs relocating, but also their family members and also their core employees.
Got it. And Kurt, what sort of founders are you looking for to come to Malta to set up their business? What sort of businesses are eligible to come and make use of this program?
Yeah, okay, this is an interesting question because, first of all, we're looking at the most innovative startups. That doesn't exclude or doesn't, in reality, it doesn't exclude sectors. However, we're looking at companies that are coming up with disruptive solutions, with innovative solutions for basically any problem or any issue that they might be tackling. So yes, anything that relates to biotechnology, medical technology, life sciences, of course, solutions in AI, those are all companies that we're looking for. The most important thing, of course, is that they fit in our ecosystem. So even when we discuss with startups when they're setting up in Malta, we are quite clear about it. Your product, your service, and your startup would fit in the local ecosystem. That you will find the talent, that you will find the necessary resources to set up. So whilst, yes, we do have our target sectors, we are not excluding any of the most innovative companies that are coming up with products that are disrupting the market. And that is where we're at a stage where we can target certain companies, and that's why, to link to what Roberta is saying, we've opened up also for the possibility for these persons, these founders, their core employees, to relocate and set up their operation in Malta. Because we believe that we can offer Europe as a market. We can also bridge the gap with the Middle East and Africa, given our geographic location. We're in the center of the Mediterranean, part of the European Union. We operate with euro and with euro as a currency, of course, and also, of course, very close to Africa and the Middle East. So basically, we are not excluding sectors. Of course, there are some exclusions which companies will be able to understand once they go into further detail on the startup residency program. However, we're looking at companies that are disrupting the market, that are innovative, and that would like to operate within the European Union.
So this program is a collaboration between your two agencies, so Residency Malta and Malta Enterprise. How does that work from a client perspective?
So basically for the client, it's seamless. Although we're two different agencies, but the client would have one point of contact. We do have, of course, our own remits. So Malta Enterprise, they vet the business, they see if it's viable. They will do a 6-month, obviously, check on the operations and on the startup. We will issue residence permits. We also assist with licenses, employment licenses. We can also assist with visa applications. However, from a client perspective, it will all be seamless as they will always have one point of contact.
So yeah, to add to what Roberta is saying, we try to make it the experience of a startup, which is difficult in itself, as easy as possible. So dealing with government agencies is usually very stressful and bureaucratic. However, with the relationship that we have with Residency Malta, but also all the other government institutions, so to speak, we try to make it as easy as possible. That's why Malta Enterprise would be the point of contact for a startup or a company setting up operations in Malta, so that a founder who is usually focused on having the best possible product or service that they're offering, at the same time, they will not need to go to Malta Enterprise for their business plan, go to Residency Malta for their residence permit, and possibly also go to a regulator for their license to operate. And that's why we act as Malta Enterprise as a point of contact between the business or the enterprise to the other agencies. In this case, Residency Malta very well versed with their residency programs and their Nomad program, which is another program that they operate, and that's why we turn to Residency Malta for their expertise when it comes to residency. And I can assure you that make it feel seamless also for the founders, their families, and their core employees to obtain their residency for a maximum of 8 years. Well, 3 plus 5, and also possible long-term residency.
Yes, because there's also the option afterwards to apply for long-term residency after staying in Malta for 5 years. It's not done through Residency Malta, but through another agency. However, as Kurt is mentioning, we also help to make the introduction and to guide the applicants accordingly.
That's really interesting, and it's something that I was getting with just chatting to Scott before the podcast as well, is really the kind of unique nature of the institutional support for startups here, and that government agencies working together to streamline that process. I think that's really important for founders, and I think that leads quite nicely on to the next question, which is, founders are always looking for fundraising opportunities, whether that comes from VCs, from angels, from all over the ecosystem. What is that like in Malta? What sort of support does Malta Enterprise offer in that regard?
So, as Malta Enterprise, we're the Economic Development Agency. We do foreign direct investment, so we go out and seek companies where we can ourselves offer a solution for them to operate in a European jurisdiction, in this case Malta, and then make sure that we have the schemes readily available for the companies to operate, relocate, and employ people in Malta. So basically, for startups, we have a very important scheme, which is the startup finance. And for the most innovative companies, that can go up to 1 million, even up to 1.5 million, for the companies that are most innovative. And of course, such funding would be non-dilutive, so we do not take equity as a government agency from the startup itself. So that is a program, a scheme that will offer up to, it can be broken down into tranches of 500,000, so 500,000, another 500,000 if you manage to show that you're an innovative enterprise, and it can also go up to 1.5 million once that company starts operating in Malta and is what is called an assisted area of operation. So basically, in Malta, there are regions where we can assist even more, particularly for startups. Then we have a business development grant, which is a direct grant to companies to help them relocating and set up their first operations in Malta. Linked to that, there will be also other schemes that we can support. Of course, there's a venture capital fund which is being set up in Malta specifically for startups, and that is being set up now, and we are opening up opportunities for such startups to find a good home in Malta. Linked to that, it's not just the financial aspect, it's also the way we assist companies start up in Malta. Basically, we are working as Malta Enterprise on a specific policy and body of legislation for startups. We will have the startup framework set up this year, which will make it easier for startups to set up, both when it comes to fiscal matters, also when it comes to other simplification measures that would help startups actually find it easy to set up their operation here in Malta. Again, we will have, as Malta Enterprise, a relationship manager working with that startup. So basically, if you need to access or meetings with our universities and academic institutions, we can make that happen. If you need anything from basically all of the island, we can make it as easy as possible to access such resource.
That's really amazing to hear, and I think it reflects what we spoke about with Scott earlier. I'd like to turn to you now. So Scott Francis is CEO as well of TrustApp, and he recently relocated his operations to Malta. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about what TrustApp does and why it was that you chose to set up camp here.
Sure. So we do biometrics and identity, but we do it with AI and ML. And we're really, what makes us kind of differently is we're very privacy focused around it, right? If we think about Europe and GDPR, kind of the making sure that you're good custodians of the data, making sure you're very privacy focused is kind of at the forefront. And so kind of relocating to the EU, but Malta in general, not only allowed us to capitalize on that focus, but also capitalize on the things that Malta is able to provide to us.
That's great. And in terms of, were there any specific challenges you faced? I'd love to hear from Scott, and then also open the same question up to Roberta and Kurt. In terms of what challenges normally face founders coming in from who are non-EU countries coming in, setting up shop in Malta. What are their hurdles like, and also, what was easy for you compared to perhaps what you were expecting, or compared to doing business in the States?
So I think we came at one of the most unique times. It was the middle of COVID. Yeah. Things were shutting down. The United States just went dark red to the EU. So we came at probably the absolute most horrible time. But I will say that it actually went very seamlessly. It was ridiculously easy. Malta Enterprise had everything set up for us. Getting our initial IDs for the founders was trivial. I think I landed, I had my meeting within 2 weeks, and I think 2 weeks after that I actually had my card, which was ridiculously fast, especially when you're in the middle of a pandemic. Malta Enterprise was great at helping us find our first office spaces, helped us with negotiations of various things, also got us introduced into the universities, because one of the things that we wanted to do was also hire Maltese nationals to help start this company. And so literally, one of the co-founders that came a few weeks before myself, I think within a month's time, he had not only the office set up, had interviews, and had 4 or 5 Maltese already hired before I even had my feet on the ground. So again, in the middle of COVID especially, that was a ridiculously easy endeavor.
They're also very aggressive in the sense that
That's true.
that even before they set foot in Malta, they had interviews set up. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right. It was a very difficult period, so it wasn't easy to get to obtain all the permits also for the founders to travel back then. However, yeah, I mean, not everything in reality was plain sailing. You will find some choppy waters in the process, but that's where we try to come in to ensure that we smoothen the journey as much as possible.
I think the challenge for non-EU nationals to relocate is actually what Kurt was mentioning, that you have to go from one office to another and get all the paperwork done. So what we're trying to do is to actually streamline that. And I think we're quite successful in that. And I think the program, the Startup Residency program, is a testimony of the way the government in Malta works. So basically, when we want to do something and we want to help startups, we get all the stakeholders together and we work together to actually make it happen, and to make it happen in the most seamless way.
Good to hear. Thank you for that. So you mentioned you hired lots of Maltese nationals. What else has changed, and how's your business grown and evolved ever since relocating to Malta?
Yeah, so we started off, I think we had a first cohort of about a dozen people, mostly out of the universities, both MCAST and University of Malta, that kind of started with us. Eventually, we also added some PhDs from University of Malta. One of the things that we were really keen on expanding also was trying to get into the African markets. And actually, Malta Enterprise helped us. There's some delegation trips that Malta does in order to really leverage a lot of the relationships that Malta has, especially in Africa. One of the first ones we went to was in Rwanda. And actually, we ended up setting up an office in Rwanda. They've also been very responsive in helping us with in Ghana and Nigeria and some other countries. And so in many cases, not only are they providing these opportunities for us, but they're also setting up the opportunities with various people on the ground. So when you come in, you're not only vetted, but in many cases, the relationships and the business meetings are set up for you. And so this has helped fast track us on some of those areas. Africa in general, very relationship driven. And so if they don't know who you are, you're never getting the meetings. And so in many cases, this kind of gets you to the front of the line.
Yeah, I mean, what's really coming through here is it's quite an efficient process in terms of getting a lot of support for both working here in Malta and also expanding.
Well, what I'd say is again, Malta Enterprise provides a lot of opportunity. You can either take advantage of it or you can't. And in many cases, the more you take advantage of it, the more they're going to provide opportunities for you.
And it's also a situation of getting or being in the right place at the right time, in the sense that if your product is good for the African market, then we can help make that happen. If it's not, it's useless to think on tapping into the African market. But at the same time, we always suggest to startups to not look at Malta as a market in itself. Possibly we can serve as a very good test bed as well. So basically the ecosystem in Malta provides for what we've been discussing, so meeting our academic institutions, meeting all the players in Malta. So possibly most of the products that a company can offer can be tested in Malta in a smaller environment and in an ecosystem which is conducive to do business. Then that product can be offered outside of Malta to Europe, Middle East, Africa, also to the US. So we have companies that basically are operating from Malta and also from the US and giving a service to Europe and the US or even Asia. So yes, I'd say we are a good landing space to reach, to start and then reach as many markets as possible.
So you've spoken a bit about some of the business advantages of being here.
Right.
Of course, relocating also has other lifestyle implications. Could you share a little bit about that? What is Malta like as a place to live?
Okay.
What do you like about it? What are maybe some challenges on that side? Or
Sure. So obviously very different from the United States. The pace of life is a little slower, much more family driven, to be perfectly honest, and much more outdoors. In the States, it seems like a lot of people kind of stick to their houses, they stick to their atomic families, if you will. Here, it's very more of a communal. The festas are just starting right now. And it is just crazy how much the Maltese like to go outside and have a good time. And it was kind of a shock. The other thing too is the relationships are a bit different. To me, it reminds me of how I was growing up, people just kind of stop by and come in and check on you. And if you're sick, everyone offers to bring you food. And again, it's much more of a very friendly, and people, the island's very safe. And so people just don't worry so much about crime or gun violence or things, again, that you read about going on in the States. So for us, moving here and bringing our children here was a no-brainer. Because again, the quality of life, the amount of different people from different cultures, Malta is very much of a melting pot of lots of different regionalities, has been absolutely lovely. I mean, the hardest thing actually, you've kind of alluded to this, was getting the children into the various schools. Yeah. It's very competitive, I think is the easiest way of putting it. But again, we actually lucked out. We got in, I think it was because of COVID. There happened to be some spots at some of the the schools that we really wanted to get into, and we were lucky to get both of our children into the same college, and now they just kind of progressed from there. But the schools again have been absolutely lovely. But that was just the one thing we were nervous about when relocating. Beyond that, again, we always say we live where people vacation. And again, it can't be stressed too much. My wife makes me promise never to make us leave. So,
Does she work for?
it's funny. She doesn't have a work visa here, but she volunteers her time. She's an author by trade, and she works with the tourism, the Maltese tourism, and she does a lot of videos and just kind of does it pro bono because she loves this country. And so you will see, you'll see her all over the place, and she knows people all the way down from Marshalllock all the way up to Gozo, and she's kind of wherever she goes, she's hugging on somebody.
No, it's a very Mediterranean lifestyle, I'd say. However, our work ethic is very much Anglo-Saxon. So basically, when it gets down to business and work, our work ethic is as strict as I'd say anywhere else, and I think that's where we get the sense of being pro-business in terms of approach. However, we love our outdoors, as Scott's saying, and we love our partying, and it's a nice mix. The fact to what Scott alluded to, that there is a very healthy mix of nationalities in Malta, is also part of how we've developed as an island throughout hundreds and hundreds of years, because we've always been under some form of foreign rule up until 1964, where we got our independence from the UK back then. But that's part of why Malta is so beautiful in terms of diversity, even when it comes to the mix of people at work, the mix of people hanging out together. And that's, I think I'd say that we're going through another phase of attracting to Malta younger people who are more of the kind that they can do their work from a nice destination. However, they're still working long hours from rather than an office, a location where they really can feel safe and at home. So, it's a mix. It's a mix of everything, I'd say.
So I think to latch on this, I think we take it a bit for granted as Maltese that the fact, for example, that we're safe. Malta is considered the second safest place for women. I always took it for granted, but when talking to women outside of Malta, you realize that it's something really important. So, and I think in general, the Maltese lifestyle is really, it's really great, and there's always something to do, especially during summer. So we try and have a mix of family life. That's why even all our programs, we include family members, because we are family oriented. But at the same time, we want business to flourish and to succeed.
That's a really important point, and on the diversity as well. I think that's a really refreshing thing to hear. I think coming back to you, Scott, just because we'll probably have quite a few founders in the audience and quite a few founders who are maybe thinking about Malta, maybe haven't really had Malta on their radar and are having a look at this and are interested. What would you say is the most important things they should know if they are considering moving here? I know you've spoken already about the challenges that you face and also the lifestyle thing, but if there's anything you're looking at maybe moving your company, what is the most important bit of advice you should have?
Yeah, again, I think Malta is a very interesting place. Again, as Kurt mentioned, it's a small yet very highly educated country here. The networks in Malta are extremely important because everyone knows everyone, or 1 or 2 degrees of separation, and making those connections are extremely, extremely valuable. Even more so in the business, because you'll be talking to someone and they'll know someone that can provide the solution that you need. The other thing too, which is, again, we were talking about this earlier, is Malta provides a great level of access that larger countries don't. So like in the States, there's no way I would be able to talk to, the foreign minister of my country. I've talked to Ian Borge multiple times here. and he asks me, directly, what can I do to help Trust Stamp be, do businesses in these other countries? I've met with the Prime Minister. This just doesn't happen in other countries. But because it's smaller here, but yet it's a full EU nation, you get access and you get the ability to have conversations that you don't get otherwise. And so, again, if you're coming here to Malta, it's important to kind of understand the culture, embrace the culture, to make connections, to network, and to, again, set those roots in place. Because it's funny, one of the first things that a lot of the Maltese will do when they ask you is they want to know, how long are you going to be here for? Because if you're coming to leave in 1 or 2 years, then they don't want to make strong words, because they always say, I come and make friends, then you break my heart. But if they understand that you come in and you want to stay, then the relationships can get very deep and very strong. And we have friends. Again, my wife gets called by a farmer in Mjar probably 3 or 4 times a week. Just he's just seeing how she's doing. She's got that connection, and he'll do anything necessary if she needs.
It links also on political and economic stability, in the sense that throughout the past decades, we've always evolved economically, but there's also a general consensus, even politically, that the way the country is moving forward, for instance, 2024, the EU is forecasting Malta to have the largest economic growth in Europe. That will not change by any form of alternation when it comes to politics. But at the same time, we're going through a phase of moving also towards a more knowledge-based economy, and that's why we are stressing on talents from abroad and for startups that have very good products to relocate to Malta. Doesn't necessarily mean leave completely from wherever you're operating, but internationalization and having a link to Europe is, I believe, very important for startups to grow out of their initial comfort zone.
So for non-EU nationals that hear all this and all the both the lifestyle and the business opportunities that are here and are interested in setting up a base in the EU, maybe even in Malta, how would they go about this? Maybe Roberta?
Sure. Basically, they need to send an email to startupresidency@startinmalta.com. One of our team members will get in touch. They will set a virtual meeting. They will see if the business is viable and what needs to be done, and they will guide them accordingly. And they will guide them not just until they get their residency permit, but even beyond that.
Okay.
So it's a relationship, basically. We do not stop whenever companies are granted a residency program. As Scott was saying, not even once they're approved some form of funding from government, but we'll try to keep the relationship ongoing. So whenever they need anything in their journey, they will knock on our doors, text on WhatsApp or call, and we'll try to be as accessible as possible.
Good. What sort of timeframes is it? I mean, if you send an email to Residency Malta, how long are you looking for? How long is the application process? How long does it take sort of from door to door, from your office in your original country to moving here and setting up?
Basically, it takes around 4 months. If they need funding, it will take a little bit more because they need to get in discussions with Malta Enterprise, but it takes around 4 months. We can also provide assistance if a person needs a visa, for example, to access Malta. We will guide them accordingly. But let's say from application stage up to the residency cards, it's 4 months.
And Scott, can I ask what sort of funding stage was Trust Stamp at when you moved here, and were you already looking for additional funding, or were you fully funded sort of at your stage?
We were decently well funded at that point. Again, I know when we came, the programs at Malta Enterprise were, especially because, as Kurt mentioned, the funding is non-dilutive, is huge. I mean, if you can get that sort of investment without diluting the overall kind of ownership that you have, that's usually not VC kind of firms, right? And they're offering a tremendous amount of benefit, but they're not really taking anything, in return for this, is not what you're used to. In fact, that's a lot of times when we talk with people, that's one of the main things that we bring up. For a lot of founders, that's really important.
Because we're not actually looking at the return in terms of monetary value, but we're looking at economic value to the island. So basically, once we grant a certain amount of funds, what we're looking for is the sector that you're operating in, the product that you're offering, whether that product will scale eventually, and of course employing people in Malta. So basically, that's why we say we're an economic development agency, because we're not looking at simply the financial aspect whenever we give out a grant, but we're looking at the economic return for the country.
Yeah, no, I mean, for us, again, it was a very attractive offer because it gave us benefit, it gave us access, it helped us grow our business. And I mean, the only thing we had to do was set up a shop here. We needed to have a certain number of our kind of decision makers relocate as part of it and make the pledge, which we wanted to do anyway, to hire Maltese talent. And so it was a huge win for us.
Once again, we're not tied to necessarily Maltese talent. However, of course, that's
people in Malta.
People in Malta.
Yeah.
But even as we're saying, relocating is not that difficult also for students who would like to find a job in Malta. And that's something that we pride ourselves in, the mix that we can offer in terms of the workforce. So yes, employ in Malta, of course, the students that are coming out of our universities and our academic institutions are very important. However, it's not restricted to that. So funding is not just restricted to employ Maltese nationals, but people that are living in Malta. Also, if such talent is relocating from other EU and non-EU.
It's a good point. Actually, we've used it as a selling point for people to join our country, because we're like, well, I can come work in Malta. And actually, again, the process of getting them their ID has not been overly difficult at all. And so this is something that in many cases, people that, they may have been to Malta or seen Malta, now they actually have an opportunity to work. They'll actually might choose us just because of that.
So all in all, I mean, we've covered lots of different aspects. What are the couple most important things, and I'm opening this up to everyone, for entrepreneurs to know about relocating to Malta, both from a business perspective and also just as residents? Do you want to maybe start off?
Oh, wow. So again, it was funny, from the United States, we didn't know a lot about Malta, to be perfectly honest. And so we kind of came with an open mind. We kind of came wanting to kind of hit the ground running. And you absolutely can do this here. Some things work at different speeds than kind of what we're used to in the United States. But at the same time, the Maltese people in general are extremely friendly. They all want to work with you. Again, language is not a barrier, which for us was also huge. And in general, kind of as Kurt mentioned, the way of doing business is very similar. The work ethic is very similar. And so it is not hard to get yourself ingratiated into the market. And then kind of the opportunities are absolutely there in terms of human capital, in terms of access to technology, in terms of infrastructure. It is all there for you, even though this is such a small country. And then the other thing, again, as far as we were concerned, the ability to branch out to mainland EU, to Africa, to Middle East, all very easy from Malta based upon its geography. So if people have that idea of wanting to expand regionality, if, for example, from the United States, they want to break into the EU, this actually might be one of the easier countries in order to break into, as opposed to a Germany or to a France. Again, much larger countries, but also much harder to make that splash into.
Right. What about you, Kurt?
No, what I'd say is that as Malta Enterprise, we can offer whatever a business needs to start operations in a different jurisdiction. It is difficult to take that decision to move to another country, to find a place where to live, to start understanding a little bit the culture, the new culture that you're living in. But that is true for any other country once you take the decision to move or to set up a new operation somewhere else. And that's where we come in to try and make it as easy as possible. So yes, difficulties companies will find, founders will find, the families will also find that you need time to adapt to a new culture. However, we try to make it as easy as possible, and we won't just write a paper that you're accepted and it stops there. We'll try to keep along with your journey and be as open as possible.
I think from a residence perspective, we also offer a very good deal, because it's a 3-year residence permit at the outset, which is different from other jurisdictions. So you don't have to renew your permit on a yearly basis. And then you also have 5 years on top of that. And it's open for founders, co-founders, their family members, as well as core employees and their family members. So it's a complete package. And also we do offer assistance in other areas. So I think that is what we offer. And also the price point is quite low and the process is very easy.
Roberta, just on that, I wanted to ask, and I know you mentioned the fact that you had to move some decision makers over with you, and you moved Scott, and in terms of also the pledge to hire talent in Malta. What are exactly the requirements in terms of a business who's taking up the residency program? Is it moving their headquarters to Malta, moving most of their staff, and what's the relationship with their country of origin? Let's say you're moving from a non-EU country, you still want to carry on doing business there, but you want to also access the EU. How does that work?
Actually, they can be discussed, because we see that every startup is different. So they might want to relocate everything. They might want to still have some operations elsewhere. They might want to get their core employees. They might not. So it's really up to them. And that is why we have a conversation with founders and co-founders to establish that and help them with the process as they wish to actually do it. So,
and that's why we try to be as upfront as possible. So cards on the table. This product, the startup, the founders can find a good opportunity in Malta, can set up. If not, we will also say it. So in the conversation, the initial conversation that we have with possible founders that want to access the startup residency program, we will say upfront, this is for you. This is might be a little bit more difficult to set up. So I think it's all, as Scott was saying. Incidentally, it's part of also the way we operate. It's building up a relationship, and building up a relationship starts also from a simple call, whether to relocate, whether to get your residency in a new jurisdiction, in this case in Malta. And it all starts from a very open and frank conversation, whether the startup fits the local ecosystem, whether you will find the necessary talent and people to employ in Malta. But it's not restricted to relocation, complete relocation of the business. Possibly co-location is something that we'll look at very favorably as well.
Well, thank you so much. This has been incredibly enlightening. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Roberta. And thank you, Scott, as well.
Hope you'll have some time to enjoy the lifestyle now.
Yes, exactly. Well, we're leaving tomorrow, but we've got the afternoon, so it's very good. It's been an incredibly helpful conversation. I hope our founders watching us as well from the UK and other non-EU states in our network are going to have found this helpful, and potentially, if they have an interest in relocating to the EU, will consider Malta as a base to do that. We've covered a lot of ground, and this has been a really great conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.